Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Tuesday, May the 8th. This will serve as our chart lesson today. We had a really good downtrend right out of the gate, and I'm hoping some of you were able to get some of that, and that really made me all my money for the day, the first couple of trades, and there were some excellent setups, and so hopefully you were able to make some money too on those trades. When you start to see a downtrend like that that's really steep, every time it pulls back to the trend line and sets us and gives you a setup, you need to be thinking about taking it. And you can see this. I mean, there was a nice bearish bar or a doji of some type or something on every one of these pullbacks, including this one, even though I didn't take it, until you got to right here. And you can see that, how bullish that was. There was no reason to sell that one. And actually, I went long right here, and this was another great trade. So this trade really made me some money because I didn't exit till up here when we hit this other high up here, and so that was a nice easy trade right there, and that made me several points as well. But let's talk about the trades. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes today, and I only mark the trades through about 1 o'clock. And but let's talk about the ones. This is one right here after the open. There was actually a long in here, but no, you just don't want to be going long when, and this is resistance across here is what this line is. You just don't want to be going long when the trend's down. If you did take a long in here, this was a good setup here right at the open. And it took a minute to take off, and if you got in here, you might have got stopped out if you didn't keep your stop below your signal bar, and that's what you got to remember. And of course, it's more risky that way because if you're wrong, you're going to give up more money. But generally, as long as you keep your, and this is the signal bar, so going long right above that was your entry. And even if you tighten it below the entry bar, which would have been this one, you were still safe by a tick. If it ticked one tick lower, it got you. But generally, your better trades, that's the way they'll work out. And there was a second entry long right here. But you were really being risky going long here right after, right here at the EMA. So, but I was looking for prices to come back to this upper trend line, and that's exactly where they came. And you got a nice setup here. You got a nice couple of dojis. This one's even got a bearish tint to the body, and it's right here where these other, highs were, right over here. And you can see that came into play previously. So this was a great place to go short. And if you tighten your stop to break even, you probably got stopped out on this one. I gave this one a little room. I didn't tighten my stop to break even. I left it right here because I had a feeling we were going to get another leg down, and that turned out to be a really good move. And I don't know if I recommend you doing that until you really get good with the price action, because the idea is to go ahead and scalp out to make sure you don't lose any money. But what I will do sometimes, I'll explain this, is I'll only scalp out if I'm trading 4 contracts. I'll only scalp out 2 of them, and I'll use the money I made on 2 of them, or say I even trade 10. I will use the money that I made on 10 of them to make my trade break even, not the stop break even. I don't know if that makes sense. Normally I'm looking for a break even on my stop so that I don't give any of my money back on that I made on the actual scalp portion. But sometimes I'll use the money I made on the scalp portion to try to get a bigger move. And so, in other words, if I scalped out 4 ticks on 2 contracts here, then I had 2 points that I could use for my stop and move my stop back further. And so prices have got to go 2 points against my entry to take me out, and then I still am at break even. So I can't lose any money even with my if I take a 2-point stop. Hopefully that makes sense. Think about it a little bit if it doesn't, and I'm sure you'll get it. But and that's what I did on this trade right here, and that's what I did on this trade right here, because at the worst I was thinking prices would make it back to the trend line here, but we hadn't made it down to the lower trend channel line. And at this point I wasn't sure if the trend channel line was here or if it was going to be way down here, but I had it drawn here thinking that that was going to be at least you know, a good place to have it. And when it met those two lines coming off that close right there, I felt pretty good. And so I didn't exit till down here. And I wish I hadn't have exited here, but there was another entry right here, and I got the rest of it on that entry. And that's the way I'll do it. And this was a nice entry right here because you had this trend line coming off these first two swings here. And this is a kind of a secondary trend line here, with this being your major trend line. And so there was another good short right here, and you got a nice bearish bar. You got a doji right here. So either one of these bars was okay. Since this was not a second entry here, this is really a breakout pullback short. And if you draw your line right across here, you'll see that, and it's kind of a double top as well. It was better to wait on a bearish bar, so going right here was the better short, and you can see that it was off to the races down. Another easy trade. And then this one right here, I didn't mark this one because we didn't get back to the EMA, we didn't get back to the trend line, we just came off the lower end on a fairly nice bounce, so I was really afraid we were heading back to this other side. But I took this trade right here and I marked it because it's a two-legged pullback to the EMA, the trend line. There's a nice doji bearish bar. There's a little double top here with a failed break above it. So this had all the earmarks of a great setup, and you can see it was. And any runners were safe. So this was good for several points here on any runners, even if you moved your stop to break even on your runners. So this was a nice trade. And I was tempted to go long right here, but I didn't because it's really on a smaller scale. It's a second entry, but it's really a first entry on this chart. And so I said, you know what, just wait and make sure you get a second entry. And plus we had all these little overlapping bars, so a breakout of here was likely to fail and come back and test this high again. So I went along one tick above this little bar right here, and yeah, it scared me, it got me nervous, but I had my stop down here. And I usually keep mine not one tick but two ticks, because sometimes it will tick that one tick and trap everybody out and in and in reverse. So I usually keep mine two ticks. So I had my stop at two ticks, which was barely a point for this trade. And this turned out to be a great setup because my runners were safe here. And I rode those all the way back up to the top of the trend line. Wish I'd have held them longer. I didn't expect us to get a break yet. I really didn't. But I should have suspected with this break down here. Generally, when prices are going to break out the other side, they will break out the lower side, or if they're going to break out the lower side, sometimes they'll break out the higher side if the trend's going up, like right here. You see we finally broke out the upper side, and we had to do it a few times, and then prices went out the lower side. So that's generally your clue. When you start to get a couple of breaks out the low side, that's the clue that they got people trapped, because a lot of people are getting short down here. They don't have these trend lines here, and they're thinking, wow, look at this trend, and they don't really realize what's going on. But if you draw that trend line down through there, and all that is just a copy of this trend line. You see there, I just copied it and drug it down just like that right there. And then that becomes much more clear, and then you realize, hey, this is a little support area all the way down through. Every time we hit it, we tend to bounce. And this turned out to be a great trade right here. So hopefully you saw that trade. And then we had a second entry long right here after a failed second entry short with a break below this really bearish bar. And this was just too bullish without getting another leg to be going short here, especially after the overshoot down here, and especially after the break of this minor trend line. So I was really surprised that we didn't come back for any more retests in this today, but that just shows you the market was pretty strong, and off it went to the upside. And but this trade and this entry here were two pretty good entries. Again, this is just a congestion area right here, and prices broke below and then closed on the very high, so going long right there, and that makes this a second entry long as well. And I'm going to explain that. What some people don't realize, it's kind of unclear, is that is every time you make a new low, the count is zero, counting down, but it also reverses the count for going up. So really all a second entry is trying to find two legs. So this is one leg, then you got a little two-legged correction back here, which is two legs back, and then you got your second leg up. So keep that in mind. So even though the count's zero here, and we're counting to the downside, so here's your count zero coming down, there's your first entry short right there, and then we pulled back, and then there's your second entry short, and it failed and created a second entry long because your count's 0 for the long side too. So there's your first leg up, pull, two-legged correction, then your second leg up. And if you measure these, you'll see they're about two perfect measured legs, and there they are, and right to the trend line. So that was where I was expecting prices to go, and that's why I exited right there, one tick below it. So I got out perfect on that move, but we ended up getting another leg up, which you never know if that's going to happen or not. And then this was all the correction we had, just a test of the trend line, a test of this double bottom, and when it held again, this was a great place to go long. And you could have actually gone long. Let me move this down a little bit. You could have actually gone long right here, but it was a little bit risky because the trend had been down, and I really was thinking that prices normally will come down and make a new low. But by waiting, as you see, prices went up, and then they came back down and broke lower right here and tested that line again. And that's where all your closes were across there if you look back across here, and then reverse. So going long right above that bar after you had that short trap was a good entry, and then it was off to the upside. And that was another good trade. And then this last trade right here, this is just a two-legged pullback to the new trend line, to the EMA. That's all that is, and there's enough room to scalp out coming back up here. It was tight, but if you dropped a limit order in here, there was plenty of room, and the odds were, at this point, I really thought we were going higher. I thought we would go quickly back up to this area right here, because as you see, we never really tested that really good after we broke lower. We did pull back right here, but there were a couple of places in there where we never tested the lows, the breakouts very good. So I was looking for prices to come back up here. We even went higher than that, as you can see. But this was a good trade for the reason I just said. It's a two-legged pullback to this trend line off these two bars here, and there's enough room really to scalp out in there, so that makes it okay. And you can figure that if a two-legged pullback to the EMA and the trend line is almost always good for at least a scalp. But if you didn't take it because of these highs, that's not necessarily a bad move. But that was enough reason to take excuse me, but that was enough reason to take it. And then you even had a breakout pullback long here, but it wasn't a good setup, and you see prices actually came back again. When you don't get a really good setup, that's what they'll do. They'll keep pulling back, but they'll just keep going higher, and that's what they did all day long here. And here's you another double bottom. I should have marked this trade, but I didn't mark anything. This is getting really into 2 o'clock, but this is a double bottom in an uptrend, so there's you another good entry, and you see how well it worked, and that would have taken you well into the 2:30 time. And then you had another double bottom right here. It's way too late to be entering, but you can see it worked. It's just a two-legged pullback to the EMA, the trend line, and so the trend is up now. And so now we're looking for the same things on the other side as we were looking on the way down. And but we're at 13 minutes. I was going to try to keep it under 10 today, so I'm going to wrap it up. But this is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. Hope you had a good trading day, and we'll see you tomorrow.